Would you ever run across South America?
I was injured on day one.
Climb the 7 summits.
The whole curtain of rock basically started coming down the mountain.
Trek across Antarctica.
Unbelievable experience, pushing to the absolute limit. I'm at my limit right now.
Or row across the Atlantic Ocean.
We were hit by 2 hurricanes, and 3 tropical storms.
Big Life is about exploring unique and untouched landscapes, pushing your physical boundaries and testing the limits of danger. Find out what it takes to be an adventure seeker, risk taker, and a high achiever only on Big Life. There are many different types of explorers. Some are in it for the adventure and the thrill of the experience. For others, it's to conduct valuable scientific research in uncharted territories. Then, there are the cultural explorers. People who not only travel to distant lands, but immerse themselves in the experience and a new way of life. Next on Big Life, meet some cultural explorers who've taken the road less traveled and gained some new perspectives on the world around them. Ryan and Colin Pyle are brothers on a journey around the perimeter of China, attempting to cross through many of China's most forbidden areas.
My name is Colin Pyle and I'm 29 years old. I'm from Toronto. I went right from university into a finance background doing currency trading and found that a little bit boring, so I up and left and decided to ride a motorcycle around China. My brother and I decided the journey that we wanted to partake was to circumnavigate China. My brother has been in China for 10 years and seen most of what it has to offer, and he wanted to show me what China was really about. In the West, you really only see the busy cities and the chaos, but China has so much more to offer. I had a lot of fears. I'd never been outside of Canada for that long, let alone in China, on a motorcycle, on the world's most dangerous roads. To be honest, I wasn't a very experienced motorcycle rider before this trip, so that was a huge fear. Whether I could actually do it without killing myself was a big fear. It was a great adventure for me. The experience started day one. Leaving Shanghai, it got up to 42 degrees, humidity, riding through crazy dust and traffic. We had a lot of problems. Most days we had something go wrong. China's just so unpredictable. You just never know what you're going to run into. The biggest problem on the whole trip was dealing with the military and the police. They just didn't want us traveling around free, taking pictures and video of things all over. A lot of places we weren't allowed to go, or a lot of places we were worried about the consequences of actually being where we were. I probably felt a little bit more at times that my life was in danger. My brother being in China and being comfortable with how the military and police treat you, I think was a little bit more able to predict the outcomes better than I was. There was a road in Mongolia, on the border of China and Mongolia, that was closed off to foreigners that we decided to go on anyways. And we disobeyed the military and continued to go on that road. Being stopped sort of 50 kilometers down the road was an interesting experience, because all the military there and the police are fully loaded with lots of guns and machinery, and often their finger on the trigger. My brother said, "Leave your helmet on, let me take care of it." So that was kind of the philosophy for the most of the trip, was my brother knows how to deal with these people, he's used to it, and I should just sort of keep quiet until asked. The terrain in China is vastly diverse. The deserts are fascinating to me. We came across giant sand dunes in the middle of western China that I had no idea existed. The mountains in western Tibet, and in Tibet, is just amazing. Riding up to Everest was one of the highlights of the trip by far. Everest Base Camp is it's a magical place, because not only did we get there, but we also had to backtrack to get there, because my brother's burnt out his clutch in Western Tibet and we had to fix that in Lhasa. And we actually backtracked to Everest because we both said there's no way we're coming all this way and not going to Everest Base Camp. You know, waking up in the morning and looking out at Everest is a special feeling that I'll never forget. My brother and I are both very sort of driven people. We set out a goal to circumnavigate China. Very few people thought we could actually do it, and we didn't want to let anybody down. We didn't want to admit that it wasn't possible. It was absolutely more of an endurance test as opposed to a motorcycle test. I've never felt so isolated in my entire life as some of the places we went in Western China. There's nothing around you for hundreds of kilometers. That kind of isolation is just something that most people would never think possible in China. Every day we had to push ourselves and push each other to keep going and to finish. The last week or so was just, it's hard to express the feelings that you had because you're so tired. You're not really taking in what China has to offer because you're just exhausted and you just want to get back home. When we finally arrived, it was somewhat surreal. We were just so exhausted and so tired. We just looked at each other and be like, I can't believe we actually did it. But we're done, and I'm now going to bed. My brother Ryan and I were awarded a Guinness World Record for the longest continuous journey in one country on a motorcycle. I would love to continue to explore. Motivation is just new experiences. That's really what life is all about, I think, is just experiencing new things and seeing different places.
Coming up next, Big Life continues with a cultural explorer's Arctic quest to circle the midnight sun. The Arctic regions have enticed many explorers to their unforgiving lands, but for thousands of scattered communities around the North Pole, living at the Arctic Circle is a way of life that's remained unchanged for years. As an author and professor of anthropology, James Raffan is a cultural explorer who set out on a journey to circle the midnight sun. What he found not only cemented his love of the Arctic, but also shed some light on the plight of the people of the North.
I make my living principally as a writer. I'm a cultural geographer, and I dabble in canoes. I spend a lot of my time trying to understand the relationship between people and place, people and where they live. I'm a first-generation Canadian. Have spent my life kind of exploring this country that I kind of accidentally ended up in. I've been an adventurer or an explorer since I was probably about 6. Having spent 35 odd years hammering around in the Arctic of Canada, I thought it was time to meet the neighbors. The latest project is called Circling the Midnight Sun. As a cultural geographer, as a writer, as somebody who's lived and traveled with Northerners, I thought what I would do is bring back stories to put a human face on the Arctic. Circling the Midnight Sun as a project began about 20 months ago. The idea was to travel the Arctic Circle. In Canada, I've crossed the Arctic Circle dozens and dozens of times. I started in Canada canoeing with a group of Inuit youth from Koloktok in Nunavut. And so for the last 2 years, it's been fabulous. Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, 4 trips to Russia. Half the circumpolar world is Russia. Very exciting place to be. little communities as I could access them, going right across Russia into Siberia, finishing up in Chukotka, which is the Russian Far East, right on the Bering Sea. And then instead of crossing, because it's very difficult to cross the border, I went back up into Alaska, which sort of finished the loop. I've had many close encounters with wildlife. In a place called Wager Bay, which is very close to the Arctic Circle, I was kayaking with some people there. In the summer, it has something like 80 bears per 1,000 kilometers of shoreline. Once the ice goes away, there are a lot of bears on the land. Now, the double kayak, I was in the single. The double kayak was way down the bay. So I was basically alone, paddling along in this folding kayak. And all of a sudden I saw this bear, big white polar bear on the shore. And all of a sudden the bear drops in the water. And I look at the top of this kayak, which is made out of neoprene, it's soft material. And I'm thinking, that's it. Start to paddle a little more quickly, the bear starts to swim, and I think he's going to swim out towards me. And so all of those things are going on in your head about how it's been a nice life. And then all of a sudden, the bear just turns and swims back to shore and gets up on shore and then just keeps walking along. And what had happened was there was a cliff on the edge of the Wager Bay, and instead of hauling his bulk up and around the cliff, he's a marine mammal after all, he just flopped into the water and swam around it and got up. And whether he knew I was there or whether he cared, didn't seem to matter. Probably the most difficult journey along the way, though, was traveling on the Oymyakon Road, which is way off in the far east of Siberia. I was actually traveling to see an armament maker who in the Saha culture is the only person who's higher than the shaman. The armament maker is the keeper of the stories, a guy called Manda. And to get there was a 17-hour journey as one of 3 people in the back seat of this tiny little sport utility vehicle. The Oymyakon Road was built by prisoners in the Gulag. They say it's actually built on the bodies of these people. But it's normally traveled in a winter condition, frozen. But we were there in August and the road was thawed. So what wasn't mud was talcum powder dust. The driver was a chain smoker and he loved Russian techno-punk music. I really thought I was going to go completely snaky, but it all completely went away when we arrived at this guy's house, this guy Mandar, and spent the next few days making knives with him in a forge. He turned out to be a guy who interpreted his dreams with art. He could see the future. But I must say, I would probably still be there if I hadn't really sucked it up to get back in this vehicle for the 17-hour drive back. From this experience, I learned so much, and I'm actually in the process of trying to sort that out, writing this book, provisionally titled Circling the Midnight Sun. The premise of my project is that Northerners have been dealing with change for millennia. Climate change is the most recent one. So I went to each of the locations along the Arctic Circle looking for people and the way they're responding to climate change. If you ask the Northerners whether climate change is the most important thing in their lives, they'll say no, that's happening slowly, we can deal with that. We see cultural change every day. We see our young people taking their own lives. We see our language decaying. And those kind of issues that have to do with how Northerners will participate in development decisions, and that notion of determination, self-determination, is a theme that goes right around the Arctic. There is hope, and there is hope in the most surprising places. But there's also tremendous difficulty and tremendous sadness. You can't ignore the difficulties, but what you can do is you can attend to people who are living with the difficulties and doing something about it to make it better.
Big Life continues after the break with a look at off-road racing around the world. Lawrence Hacking has had a love affair with off-road racing most of his life. Carving out a racing career that spans more than 40 years, he's been fortunate to race both motorcycles and trucks in some of the most dangerous conditions on the planet. But while off-road racing has allowed him to travel the world, his passion has always been experiencing the different cultures around him, from Africa to Mongolia and Mexico.
I am a rabid motorsports enthusiast. My whole life is surrounded by motorcycles and cars and off-road race trucks and adventure. I've been racing for a very long time. I started when I was 16 years old, so that's a long time ago. It's 40 years this year. You know, off-road racing, it's actually a kind of a lifestyle that people get into. There's a kind of a small community around the world that do this kind of off-road competition. Off-road is not structured, and a certain type of person is attracted to that type of situation. Kind of a sense of affronting the elements and taking on the challenge head-on and accepting responsibilities for your own actions. The very first rally I did was actually the granddaddy of all rallies, the Dakar in 2001. The Dakar Rally, for a person like me, it's a pinnacle. It's like climbing Mount Everest. One of the largest and most watched motorsports events in the world. So I hit the very last classic Paris to Dakar. It's never happened since then. So it was nice to do that because it really had a flavor of the original Dakars. The challenge is very, very difficult. The race itself was 21 days. It has a rest day in between, and the first 3 or 4 days were in Europe, so you spent a lot of time on paved roads. But the real action began on the 4th day in Morocco, and from there on it's camping in a tent and riding up to 500, 600 kilometers a day off-road. The Dakar has a full gamut of extreme conditions. I mean, we started in Paris, France, in basically zero degrees and raining to very, very hot conditions in Mauritania. The Sahara Desert, 40 degrees, somewhere like that. And everything in between, sandstorms and long distances, and of course falls and dealing with none of the modern amenities that we enjoy here in Canada. It's not easy. There's a reason why it's considered the world's toughest motorsports event. I was fortunate enough to be the first Canadian to finish the Dakar Rally. I actually went back in 2010 to South America in an off-road race truck. No Canadian has it finished on 4 wheels. So it would be really nice to become the first Canadian to finish on 4 wheels. So I set my sights on that. My friends and I worked very hard at putting together a pretty interesting off-road race truck. My off-road race truck is based on a Mason Motorsports Pro Runner. It's a tube chassis, purpose-built off-road truck. I mean, it's my own design as far as how it's equipped. The truck has a VW turbo diesel engine and a Toyota transmission. It has a Chevy Colorado body on it, and it's equipped according to the FIA rulebook as far as being prepared for rally goes. We put it together, and fingers crossed we'll have good luck with it. Off-road racing's taken me literally around the world. And Mongolia, to me, when I decided to go there, I didn't even really know where it was. The interesting thing about Mongolia is it's one of the most remote, untouched countries in the world. There are people, nomadic people, that live like they did literally hundreds of centuries ago. One of the most arid, driest places in the world. It also has the most extreme temperatures in the world as well. I think it goes from -40 to +40 degrees, and it's a really good way to see the country. Unless you're unbelievably well supported, you can't get to these parts of the world any other way than going in a rally. The Baja 1000 has been going on for more than 40 years. It started back in '67. And it takes place in Baja, Mexico, which is a really interesting spot. Not only does it lend itself very nicely to that type of race, which is a start-finish non-stop race. It's usually 1,000 miles. And for the desert racing community in southwestern states, it's the pinnacle for them. I've been down to Baja quite a few times. It's more of a team effort. We have up to 24 people supporting it. Because it's non-stop, you have to go from pit stop to pit stop, and you always have to have a crew there. So being a crew member is almost as challenging as being a driver or co-driver. Baja is really the Wild West. Just exciting parts of flying through the desert at 85 miles an hour, hitting huge bumps, flying through the air, sand and dirt and dust coming through the windshield. Motorcycling, you can hurt yourself, and you have to realize that every time I let the clutch out, I remind myself that this is a dangerous thing that I'm going to be getting into, and you have to ride accordingly. The speeds are very, very high, and a lot of things get broken, and a lot of crashes occur and things like that. All sorts of mayhem occurs. That's what off-road racing's all about. The sensation of riding or driving is unbelievable. I mean, very little compares to flying across, the desert in an off-road race truck, V8 500 horsepower race truck. I mean, that is a sensation that's really a rush of adrenaline. It's a little bit like a drug. I'm so thankful and appreciative of my incredible opportunities that I've been given and had to experience life and have a really interesting life.